Hello everybody, this is Greg. Today we're talking tire, and let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is tire inflation pressure. I can take my road bike tire here, and that tire feels firm. It feels like you could ride on it. If I just went out and squeezed it, I would think that tire's ready to go. But that's not the case. We're going to check with an air gauge. Now this tire is supposed to hold 100 pounds. And we'll check it with this air gauge. Okay, it's only got 40 pounds of air pressure in it. So if you rode this tire the way it is, you would probably get a pinch flat. And what that is you go through a pothole or over railroad tracks or something, and the tire doesn't have enough air to hold it up. What it does is it'll squeeze the tire and the tube up against the edges of the rim, and it'll actually puncture the tube, and the tire will go flat. You also run a chance of bending your rims if you run with too low of air pressure. There is one sign of a bike that's been ridden with real low air pressure, and that is the valve stem being real crooked. Even if it wasn't ridden with low air pressure, if the valve stem is crooked, you'll end up with a flat tire anyway, because that stem and the tube rub up against things inside there, and eventually it'll just wear a hole in the tube and it'll go flat. Okay, the best way to avoid that is to always check your tires before you go out on a ride. Use a floor pump like this one that has an accurate gauge on it, and that'll get you the right inflation pressure. Now if you're out on a ride and you get a flat tire, you might use a pump like this or a CO2 air inflator. If that's the case, before you ever carry a pump like this, pump the tire up and check with an accurate gauge, either an accurate floor pump gauge or with a gauge like this, and count how many pumps it takes to get to the desired pressure. Okay, if you're going to use a CO2 inflator like this, it's a good idea to use it at home. Try it out a couple of times, because you don't want to end up out on the road with a flat tire and not figure out how to use it. Plus you're going to want to know how much air this CO2 inflator will put in that tire. So, okay, just to give you an idea how this works, this one's designed to take threaded or threadless CO2 cartridges. That holds them in this compartment here. So you just unthread this. Take the cartridge, thread it straight in, keep turning it until you turn it pretty hard, because you have to poke a hole in that cartridge in order to make it work. I put this back on, this cover, because the whole thing gets pretty cold. Okay, this end threads onto the valve stem. Okay, and you just give it a squeeze and empty it all the way in there. You want to use it all. Once there's no more CO2 going into the tire, you mud up on it, and unscrew it. There we go. And that's how that one works. Okay, now we're going to go on to the next major problem you can have. This one's caused mainly by changing tires and not using the right tools. So we're going to let the air out of this tire, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, this is a road tire, so it fits pretty tight to the rim. See, Just heard the bead break there. Okay. But I'm not strong enough to get it off without using some kind of a tool. So I'm just breaking the bead all the way around, loosening it. But see, I can't get it off. It's pretty tight. Here's the tool that you don't want to use unless you want to tear up your rim, the tube, and possibly the bead on the tire. Screwdriver. The worst tool that you can use. It's going to tear up that aluminum rim and tear up other kinds of rims. The other thing it's going to do is poke a hole in your tube. You might get by with it once in a while, but most of the time you won't. Okay, the right tool is these tire irons like this. They're plastic. As you can see, the edge is made so it's smooth and it won't tear into your tube or your rim or anything else. And to use these, it's pretty straightforward. Just hook them under the bead of the tire like so, and pull it back, hook it on the spoke, just go on around like that. Anyway, that's another big cause of problems with tires. I'm going to go ahead and take this tire off of this rim, and then I'll show you the next thing. Okay, here's the other problem that you can have. This rim strip can get holes poked into it by the ends of the spokes or by a rough edge on the rim. This strip is there to keep the tube from getting punctures. So there's the end of the spokes, and they can tear up a tube. So if you have damage to this rim strip, if you have damage to the rim strip, you may end up with damage to your tire. There's some round holes that these spokes are recessed into on my road bike. Now those holes have kind of a sharp edge. So what happens is you fill up the tube. It takes a lot of pressure to fill up a road bike tire, about 100 pounds. So it goes down into that hole, and as you're riding, it just wears back and forth until it puts a hole in it. And I replaced several tubes before I figured it out. If you had a bad rim strip or one that didn't quite fit, you would have holes poked into this tube from the inside, not the outside. The holes would be on this side here, and so that's an indication that you didn't get road damage per se. What you got was damage from problems with the rim strip or with the spoke protruding further than it should. A good policy with rim strips is if you ever replace the tire, replace the rim strip at the same time. That way you won't end up with the one that's old and cracked and damaged or anything. Another fairly common thing you could have happen, not that common, but it does happen, is a sidewall blowout. And what causes a sidewall blowout? Typically it's riding on old tires. The tire that you're looking at right now is one that was over 10 years old. I shouldn't have been riding on it, but I didn't pay any attention to it. What made it worse, this bike was always carried on the back of my motorhome, so that tire was out in the sun all the time. The other thing you can have, though, is sidewall damage from improper storage or from road hazards, and that can also cause a sidewall blowout. Rare occasions it happens from overinflation, but most of us don't overinflate our tires. We err on the other side and ride with not enough air. Same thing goes for a wheel that wobbles. That kind of damage is usually from hitting rocks or logs on a mountain bike, or riding over curbs, or down into big potholes on a road bike, and or getting in a collision like I did with this wheel. These are the most common bicycle tire problems I've had. If you've had different problems, be sure and let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure you like and share this video. Thank you.